Well, hey, hello, and how are you, everybody? Welcome back. 23-19, the Bills win their preseason finale over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So look at that, Matt. They end on a high note. They're going to the regular season with a win. Now, I'm going to echo the same message I said last week when they got absolutely shellacked by the Chicago Bears. The team performance is one thing, but the individual performances matter way more than the final score on that scoreboard. So there's a lot of ways you can start. I think you can start with guys who certainly help their case to make this roster on the bubble. I think one of those guys is Tyrell Shavers. I go back to that touchdown grab. Holy crap. There it
Yeah.
is right there. I think I saw somebody on Twitter edit 53-man roster spot secured on the football as Shavers comes down with it. It was very creative. It was very funny. But
Yeah.
I mean, he's the first guy to my mind that sticks out that when he needed to have a big performance, he went out and did.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think I posted after he made that touchdown catch that he just made the 53-man roster.
Yeah.
I don't know legitimately. I'm not kidding. I think if we would have done this we wouldn't have, but if we were doing the 53-man roster projection before the final preseason game, I don't think I would have had him on mine. I think he would have been just on the outside looking in. Now I think he has forced the Bills' hands legitimately because that's not a player that I think you can let another team poach. Like they'll see that highlight play and they'll go like, okay, we'll try and take a flyer on this guy and put him on our roster. So I think he's going to make the 53-man roster. I still don't think like, okay, the Bills have found this all-star stud wide receiver, but
sure.
I think they have found a solid or a more solid depth piece that will give them a little bit of a jolt and can play the boundary, which is something they've been a little thin at over the years after injuries happen. So their main boundary guys are going to be Keon Coleman and Joshua Palmer, but Tyrell Shavers, maybe he's got a role. He got some special team snaps in this game. I think that matters overall. Really strong summer, and he caps it off in a big, big way.
Yeah, I mean, look at this past week, Matt. Like the San Francisco 49ers were demolished at wide receiver, right? I think of a team that like when people think like, oh, Tyrell Shavers could be a sneaky guy back onto the practice squad. I don't think that's the case anymore. He's put out in good enough film. There are those teams now that we have realistic examples who are like looking for wide receiver help. Tyrell Shavers, I'm just naming one of the 32 teams that would make sense for this, right? But like that's a team that could easily see that play, see the film that Tyrell Shavers has stacked up over this preseason and training camp and be like, yeah, we need to get this guy onto the roster. I thought another guy that has played really well this preseason and a little different than Shavers, there's no roster spot for him, but Frank Gore Jr. had another really solid day today. And I think he'll be a guy that the Bills will get back on the practice squad. However, I don't think the chance of him being there is nearly as low as it was last year. I still think it is pretty low. I think they will get him back onto the practice squad, but he certainly has made a case for himself that maybe some team who really needs running back depth on their 53-man to take a swing at him. I don't think that's going to be the case, and I think the Bills are going to be really happy if they can get him back there.
Feel the same way about Jimmy Charlo. I think those are two preseason standouts from the last couple weeks that Bills fans have really enjoyed watching. Don't think either of them has a chance to make the roster. Frank Gore Jr. especially, just because of the position. They love the three running backs that they have. So I just didn't even really see a path for him unless there was an injury. I think he'll go to the practice squad. I think he'll continue to learn the offense, continue to be in the room. And then if there is somebody who gets banged up, I think he'll slide in. Jimmy Charlo, the linebacker room is not overly plentiful, is the way I would explain it. But I think it would be a little bit short-sighted to keep him over a player like Shaq Thompson, who has so much experience in the NFL. So that is why, to me, it's like, okay, the wide receiver room, I feel like we just talked about that with Tyrell Shavers, 6 people. The linebacker room, I think, has to be 5 people. And I think they've got some tough decisions to make. Like, I don't know if Edouin Ulofoshio will be on the team. I'm not anticipating that. So the five I would have them keeping would be Matt Milano, Terrell Bernard, Dorian Williams, Joe Andreessen, and Shaq Thompson.
That's the same exact 5 that I have too. Jimmy Charlo, I actually just tweeted this towards the end of the game. I mean, he had another big play, recovered fumble, a couple tackles. The Bills get a big win if they can keep a guy like him on the practice squad. He's intriguing. He's a guy who just has a nose for the football, likes to play in that mentality that Sean McDermott craves out of a guy like him. Obviously, you got to see a little bit of like what that looks like on that Hard Knocks episode. I think the Bills could really get a big win if they can keep him back on this practice squad because, like you said, not only is the depth maybe not there in the linebacker room, I mean, aside from Bernard, Milano, and Dorian Williams, Andreessen fills a good special teams role that I think they're really happy that he does in that facet of the game. But Shaq Thompson, I mean, that's a guy I think they keep there with their veteran experience, but there's nothing solidified there. Like if an injury comes into that room, they're going to need to bring somebody up. And I think like Jimmy Charlo could be that guy. And at this point, maybe you're willing, if you're Sean McDermott, to take a chance on Charlo than you are a guy like Olafocio, who you just kind of already know what it is, what's there. I mean, he's played Matt, pretty late into the game each and every one of these preseason games, which is sometimes a telltale sign that, things aren't going your way, that the coaching staff really needs to see more tape on you to make a decision there. It's a good segue to get into the 53-man roster predictions that come down Tuesday at 4 o'clock Eastern. Matt, was there one position group in general where, like, when I was making this list too, you had like a tough time trying to be like, how do we make a move here?
Cornerback. I had a really hard time with cornerback, and I think that watching the preseason finale got me to the point of Dane Jackson not being on the team just because he was out there so late in this game, like so late. They got Dorian Strong off the field sooner. They got Jamarcus Ingram off the field sooner. That to me does not bode well for a player like Dane Jackson. Now, the added piece of this is the Tre'Davious White injury, and is this something that is going to spill into the regular season? We don't know a ton about the injury. He was on an interview on the pregame show with Josh Reed before their coverage began, and he said that he had a little leg injury, but they did not have a timeline on it. So knowing that there's not a timeline, and then apparently, we're here doing this, I guess Sean McDermott wasn't asked about Trey White following the game from anybody who was in the postgame press conference. So now we don't even know until we get back out to the facility, likely until Wednesday, and the 53-man roster will already be made by that point. So this was a really long-winded way of me saying that I had a really hard time putting together what I think the cornerback room will look like.
No, 100% right. And I went back and forth. You and I kind of did a flip-flop. If you had asked me before, maybe earlier today, I started to kind of come around to this thought. And then with hearing Trey White's injury, we don't know what that is. We don't know what the length he'll be out is, what the prognosis of it is. I think we're leaning more towards a Maxwell Harrison starting on IR, which I think is going to,
sure.
I think we are trending to that direction. I think that room just needs the depth. And I think Dane Jackson is serviceable enough. He did get a little banged up tonight. Looks to be like he'll be able to.
He went back in. Back in after that.
So I think they need depth there. And that's why it impacted a few other decisions that I had to make across this 53-man roster projection I put together, is because you just need to build it there. Now, I do think when you get guys like Ogunjobi, if Dane Jackson makes it into week 7 of the season, right? When you get guys like Ogunjobi back, when you get Maxwell Harrison back, whenever that may be, I think he is probably the first guy down and out of this roster at that point. But I think he gets on the 53-man just because they need to have a depth piece there. And I think it goes back to the conversation about Dane Jackson. They know what his ceiling is. They know what their floor is. They know him. They trust him to an extent. And I think that's something where they can hey, we can tread water a little bit with depth pieces like Dane Jackson while Dorian Strong gets up to speed before you put more responsibility on a rookie. You hope that Trey White can be, back out there week 1. And then obviously Christian Benford is, hope he stays healthy because he's gonna solve a lot of your problems and mask a lot of things there too. And then it kind of trickled into a little bit, Matt, the safety room. I thought was going to be a lot harder to put together, but then as that kind of came through, it felt pretty straightforward with Taylor Rapp, Cole Bishop, Damar Hamlin, Cam Lewis, and Jordan Hancock. That was for my 5 in the safety room.
Yeah, and I think a little bit of a promising sign from Cole Bishop in this preseason finale.
Much better game.
Looked comfortable, and he should. He's going up against backups, right? So he should look good and look comfortable, but he did. So that's what you want to see. That's what you could ask from him. I don't think he has officially won the competition yet to be the second starting safety, but I think that is ultimately what is going to happen. I think it's going to be him and Taylor Rapp back there, even though Sean McDermott kind of sent his message the other day to my question of hey, we're still looking for who's starting next to T-Rapp. I'm very much anticipating that it's going to be Cole Bishop, and you just kind of have to live with the growing pains, but admittedly, and this might be a little bit mean, but I think the growing pains of Cole Bishop is still going to be better than some of the safety play they've gotten in years past. So that's why you just kind of have to deal with it.
100%. And I'm with you there too. I think he took the better step. You have to just trust Cole Bishop. I think when I think of Cole Bishop and his position battle, I think of it a lot like Mitch Trubisky as the backup quarterback battle. It was his job to lose. I do think it's been up and down. I think availability has obviously been the big issue for Bishop, but I don't think Cole Bishop has done enough to lose that opposite spot of Taylor Rapp as the starting safety. Because again, for the same reasons you said too, not to keep agreeing with you or just echo your thought, but I mean, Damar Hamlin and Cam Lewis and Jordan Hancock. I think Jordan Hancock will be good, but like that's a rookie that has now been banged up, is a little injured, that you haven't been able to put nearly as much reps as Cole Bishop has. You know what you kind of already are getting with Damar Hamlin and Cam Lewis. I've always said I like that they use him more in a utility role and they can move him around in the secondary rather than just pigeonholing him into being a starting safety. You're higher ceiling with a guy like Cole Bishop next to Taylor Rapp. Defensive line, Matt, I've been getting a lot, or I just seen a lot on social media, people arguing about, when you look at this position group and the one name that, and I first will say, on a side note, Deion Walker. Can we just say what a night?
Yeah,
Deion
strong
Walker.
game.
Very, very strong game.
Outing.
Javon Solomon with a big play there at the end. He was on my 53-man. One guy I have making the 53-man that some people have gone up and down on that even want to see him get traded is Dwayne Carter. But I think he's done enough. He's going to make this roster. He's on the 53-man. But I can also understand why some people are a little bit hesitant about it, because it just feels like he hasn't put together that Dwayne Carter type performances that we saw him do last season before he got injured.
They're not cutting a 3rd-round pick in their second year. They're just not doing. And I know why you're nodding. I read it and then just said I will kindly disagree, and because what we're talking about is that in Dom's 53-man roster projection, he has Landon Jackson, the Bills' 3rd-round pick, not being on the roster. I wholeheartedly disagree. That is okay. We are allowed to disagree on things.
For sure.
Everybody is allowed to disagree.
Cuts got to be made somewhere.
I would bet all of the money in my bank account that he is not cut.
Okay, that's cool. I'll take. I mean, there's not a lot of money in my bank account, so I could very much bet.
They're not cutting a 3rd-round pick. They're not cutting a 3rd-round pick, even from last year, let alone from this year.
I mean, my thing with Landon Jackson, I just haven't been impressed. He hasn't done anything.
Totally fair. Totally fair to say that he hasn't done enough to impress you, but a day 2 draft pick is still a significant asset. I think that Landon Jackson could be a player who's not active on game days, but is on the roster. I just don't think, I mean, if they really are unimpressed, they would try and move him, but they would never just cut him. Because you're talking, I mean, even if you had to take something way less than you paid, you wouldn't just cut a 3rd-round draft pick in their first year. I guess you would be trading him for a 5th-round pick or something.
The only thing that I didn't factor into that decision, I base it solely off of just what my observations were. Now, the one thing that's, because somebody did obviously come right at me in the comment section. The one thing
did that already happen?
Oh, already. Yeah. They're so upset with that decision. And I get it. But also what I didn't maybe factor in is the financial repercussion of cutting a guy like Landon. I haven't even looked at what that number looks like, at what the Bills might eat up.
He doesn't cost you anything, and you need cheap labor on your 53-man roster when you pay Josh Allen $1 bajillion. So they need some guys on their 53 who don't have very substantial salaries.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's why Brandon Beane gets paid to be the general manager. I don't. But again, roster cuts have to come somewhere, because this team has to make them. And I go back to the fact that I just feel like the secondary, whether it's cornerbacks or safeties, needed more depth. I thought the offensive line did very well last year with the kind of the pretty straight and narrow depth that they had. So the offensive
line is the other place where we disagreed on the 53-man roster.
We did disagree on one person, and I think we almost would have been the same, but we flip-flop one person. You had Chase Lunt, the rookie, making it. I had them, if he doesn't go on the PUP list, Cedric Van Pran-Granger getting on that list.
He's already on the PUP list, so that's why I think the Bills will keep him there
and not take him off,
because then it gives them the flexibility of doing something else. So you had Ryan Vandermark though making the team. I at this point did not. My thought process was just that Chase Lund, if you're going to have 2 backup tackles, your 2 backup tackles in this instance would be Tylen Grable and Chase Lunt.
Yeah.
If they have
I agree with you on Grable.
If they have the extra space, then I would say, okay, Vandermark makes the team. But the reason I didn't do that is because I think they'll need to keep probably a backup center, is my guess. So, and then Alec Anderson, a lot of people would conventionally just be like, oh, he's the backup center, but he's also the backup guard. So you kind of need to figure out something to do there in case you do get banged up.
Right.
I mean, all of this could be wrong. Like,
Oh,
because
for sure.
we have no idea what injuries they're going to do. So Kendrick Green has been somebody who's been around the league a little bit before Buffalo. So that's why, he's got some experience. I had him in there as just kind of like the primary backup center to Connor McGovern, and then Alec Anderson is like the primary backup center and guard.
I had Kendrick Green on my first draft, and then when I was going through, my way of doing it is I put down the names I thought, and then I was a little bit over 53. So then you have to start going through process of elimination and cutting from there. But I also just think whatever the Bills do at offensive line, if knock on wood, if they run into the same injury kind of luck that they had last year, they're going to be serviceable with the pieces they kept there, because the one thing that you felt like, especially last year for both sides of the trenches, the Bills fared pretty healthy in that department. So I think if you have to go add depth to other places, like where injuries happen, the secondary, receiver room, linebacker, you're going to be okay if you can keep your numbers a little bit thinner than maybe some other teams would around the league. You and I both agreed on the wide receivers. I feel like that's going to be a big discussion with who we were talking about, Tyrell Shavers, but I think we had all 6 guys: Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, Joshua Palmer, Elijah Moore, Curtis Samuel, Tyrell Shavers.
Did you who did you have as your kick returner and punt returner? Did you have Codrington?
I did take Codrington. Yep.
Yeah, I didn't know what to do either. I took Codrington.
That's tough.
It is tough.
That's a tough, like,
but nobody won the job.
I could be I'm glad you brought that up. I very well could be wrong, and I wouldn't. That'd be the least. That and me being wrong actually about Landon Jackson would not be surprising at all. But no, Codrington also not winning the return job would also not be that surprising to me, because again, it's like your point. I don't feel like anybody stood out. Like, I really thought Laviska Shenault was going to be the guy to kind of take this job and run with it. I don't know. I don't think the Bills have enough depth to do like I have a 1 punt returner, then I have a kick returner. It's got to be pretty much the same person. The 2-man kick return game is what normally a combination of like
Codrington and Ray Davis or Ty Johnson.
Ty Johnson.
So that's what it'll be. It'll be one of the running backs, and then whoever wins the kick return job, and then that person will also be the primary punt returner. I also think Codrington as a defensive back, even though it would be a nightmare, would be another just body in that room because you were banged up there. So in case of emergency, he would be there. So yeah, that's kind of why I did that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, they're gonna have some tough decisions to make, and every single year they usually do something we're not expecting. So maybe there's a trade out there. Maybe, we're talking about a player like Ryan Vandermark, and they are trading him for a corner or something. And then all of a sudden that has an impact on a player like Jamarcus Ingram or like Dan Jackson, or maybe they trade Dwayne Carter if they don't see a role for him for a player, or maybe they do something crazy. I don't really know. I think if the Trey injury is substantial or stretches into the season, Russell Douglas might be getting a phone call, but I don't know if he would be willing to come back for not a ton of money because they don't have much money. Yeah. And now I guess we just wait till Tuesday.
Yeah. That's 4:00 Eastern, 53-man NFL trade deadline, cut down deadline. Excuse me. I think, and least shocking surprise, Josh Allen does sound like he will make the 53-man roster. I had that noted at the top too. So we'll see you guys then. We'll have tons more this week leading up to it. So stick right here. 7 Sports WKBW. We'll get you covered. That's Matt Bove. I'm Dom Tibbetts. See you guys later.